remember it like it was yesterday, even though years have passed. I was a junior in high school. It was an ordinary Wednesday afternoon, or at least it started that way. The bell had just rung, signaling the end of lunch, and I was heading to my next class, art. The art room was located on the far end of the school, a trek I always rushed through, hoping to avoid being late. My pace quickened as I navigated the crowded hallways. Then, without warning, the intercom crackled to life. The voice of Mrs. Jenkins, one of the school secretaries, filled the hall. Her usually calm demeanor was replaced with a shaky, almost panicked tone. "Attention, students and staff," she began, her voice trembling. "The school is now on lockdown. Please proceed to the nearest room and follow lockdown procedures immediately. This is not a drill." For a moment, the hallway froze in eerie silence. Then chaos erupted. Students and teachers alike darted in every direction. Papers and books scattered across the floor as panicked voices filled the air. My heart raced as I realized how serious the situation was. I sprinted toward the art room, narrowly dodging a few other students who were just as frantic as I was. When I burst into the art room, it was already teeming with people. Some were huddled in small groups, whispering nervously, while others were pacing back and forth. Mrs. Carson, our art teacher, immediately sprang into action. She ushered in the last few stragglers before locking the door and turning off the lights. "Everyone to the back of the room now," she whispered urgently, motioning toward the far corner where we wouldn't be visible from the door. The room fell into a heavy silence. 30 or so students crammed together, trying to stay as quiet as possible. My mind raced with questions. Was this a mistake? A false alarm? But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something about Mrs. Jenkins's voice made it clear. This was real. Mrs. Carson's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression immediately darkened. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the message. "There was a murder in the neighborhood just down the road," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The police believe the suspect might be hiding nearby, possibly in the school." The weight of her words settled over us like a suffocating blanket. A younger girl sitting a few feet away began to cry, her quiet sobs echoing in the otherwise silent room. A couple of students tried to comfort her, but their own fear was evident in their trembling voices. Mrs. Carson looked over at me. I was sitting closest to the supply closet. "Ethan," she whispered, "can you grab a blanket from the closet? It might help calm her down." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat as I stood up. The supply closet was a spacious walk-in, lined with shelves stacked high with art supplies. As I stepped inside, the faint smell of paint and paper filled my nostrils. I scanned the shelves for a blanket, my eyes darting nervously around the dimly lit space. That's when I saw it. In the back corner of the closet, partially hidden behind long pieces of fabric used for sewing projects, there was a pair of dirty, scuffed shoes. My heart skipped a beat as I realized they were attached to a pair of legs. Someone was crouched back there, motionless. It took every ounce of willpower not to scream. My mind raced. Why weren't they with the rest of the class? And then, like a cold wave crashing over me, the horrifying realization hit. This could be the murder suspect. I forced myself to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't help anyone. Pretending I hadn't noticed the figure, I grabbed the first blanket I saw, turned off the closet light, and carefully shut the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I handed the blanket to the girl and then leaned in to whisper to Mrs. Carson. "There's someone hiding in the supply closet," I murmured, my voice barely audible. Her eyes widened in alarm, but she quickly composed herself. Without saying a word, she pulled out her phone and began typing a message. I assumed she was alerting the front office. The next 10 minutes felt like an eternity. The room was so silent that I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. Every creak of the building made my heart jump. I kept glancing at the closet door, half expecting it to burst open. Finally, Mrs. Carson's phone buzzed again. She read the message, took a deep breath, and stood up. "Everyone, listen carefully," she said, her voice steady but firm. "We've been instructed to evacuate the building and head to the middle school across the street. Stay calm and follow me." We lined up at the door, moving as quietly as possible. My eyes flicked back to the closet one last time as we filed out. The door remained shut. Part of me was sure the person inside would come after us, but they didn't. As soon as we were outside, Mrs. Carson whispered, "Run," and we did. We sprinted across the street to the middle school, not stopping until we were safely inside. Once there, we waited for hours, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. Eventually, our parents were allowed to pick us up. That night, the news reported that the SWAT team had stormed the school and captured the suspect. No one was hurt, but the thought of how close we had been to danger still sends chills down my spine. Even now, every time I step into a supply closet, I can't help but feel a shiver run down my spine. That afternoon changed the way I see the world. You never think something like this will happen, until it does. It was just a regular school day, or so I thought. I was on my way to math class when my friend Allison stopped me in the hallway. "Hey, are you ready for the test today?" she asked, her voice a little nervous. My heart sank. "Wait, the test is today? I thought it was next week." Allison gave me a look like I just sprouted a second head. "No, it's today. I stayed up all night studying for it. How did you not know?" Panic hit me like a truck. This wasn't just any test. It was a huge part of our grade, and I hadn't studied at all. My brain went into overdrive, trying to figure out what to do. "Okay," I said, trying to think fast. "Here's the plan. Tell the teacher I'm sick. I'm gonna hide in the bathroom for the rest of the period." Allison hesitated, but eventually nodded. "Fine, but you owe me for this." I slipped into the nearest bathroom and went straight for the last stall. My plan was simple: camp out for an hour, scroll through my phone, and avoid the test completely. I hung my backpack on the stall door hook, trying to calm myself down. And that's when everything went sideways. The intercom crackled to life, and the principal's voice came through, sounding tense. "Attention! The school is now under lockdown. This is an emergency. Everyone, get to the nearest classroom and follow lockdown procedures immediately." At first, I thought it was just a drill. We'd done them before, and they were always annoying, but harmless. But then the lights went out. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a drill. I grabbed my phone and texted Allison, desperate to know what was going on. Her reply came almost instantly. "A guy brought a knife to school. He was threatening another student in the hallway. It's over some girl, but people are saying he's completely unhinged." Unhinged. That word stuck in my mind, and I felt a wave of terror wash over me. I was alone, hiding in a bathroom stall with absolutely no way to protect myself. I stood on the toilet seat, pulling my feet up so no one could see them under the stall door. My heart was racing, and I tried to stay as silent as possible. Minutes dragged by like hours. Then I heard the bathroom door creak open. Someone came in, and they were crying. Soft, muffled sobs that echoed in the silence. I couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl, but whoever it was, they walked into the stall right next to mine and closed the door. That's when I heard it. A clatter of metal hit the floor, and I looked down. The tip of a long, silver knife slid into view under the stall divider. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, and I could feel my heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. For a second, I couldn't move. My brain was screaming at me to do something, but my body felt like it was stuck in place. Then, out of pure panic, I made a break for it. I unlocked the stall door and sprinted out of the bathroom without looking back. My legs carried me faster than I thought possible, and I didn't stop running until I burst out of the school doors and into the sunlight. That's when I saw them. An entire team of police officers, guns drawn, waiting outside. I threw my hands in the air, yelling, "It's not me! It's not me!" They quickly patted me down, and once they realized I wasn't a threat, I blurted out everything. I told them where the person was, what I had seen, and where they could find the knife. It didn't take long for them to catch the guy. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Turns out, he never actually used the knife. He had just been threatening the other student. But that didn't stop him from getting arrested and facing some serious consequences. He never came back to school after that, and honestly, good riddance. Even now, whenever I walk past that bathroom, I can't help but feel a chill run down my spine. That day could have ended so much worse, and I'll never forget how close it felt. When I was a sophomore, geometry was the one class I barely survived. My best friend, Mia, was my saving grace. She always helped me make sense of the endless stream of angles and proofs. One afternoon, we were sitting in class, and our teacher had just wrapped up the lesson. She gave us the rest of the period to start on our homework, which for me was basically a chance to beg Mia for help. I was halfway through trying to understand one of the problems when the intercom crackled on. Attention, the school is now under active lockdown. Please shelter in place immediately. Mia and I exchanged a glance, and I could feel my stomach knot up. Usually, lockdown drills were announced ahead of time. The teachers always knew. "Is this a drill?" someone asked. Our teacher shook her head, her face pale. "No, this isn't a drill." That's when it hit all of us. This was real. The teacher sprang into action, locking the door and flipping off the lights. Then we all worked together, shoving the heavy metal desks against the door as a barricade. The room was filled with nervous whispers and the sound of scraping desks. Once the door was secured, we all huddled in the back corner of the classroom. I ended up under the teacher's desk with a few other students, trying to make myself as small and quiet as possible. Everyone was glued to their phones, scrolling for any information. That's when I saw the news alert. There was a report about a man, believed to be high on drugs, who had assaulted someone right near our school. Police thought he might have broken into the building and was still on the loose. My chest tightened. This wasn't just some false alarm. This was serious. I whispered what I'd read to the people near me, and soon enough, the whole class knew. Some students started crying, and a few began texting their parents to let them know what was happening. I couldn't stop thinking about my younger sister, Lily. She was a freshman, and somewhere else in the building. I texted her, asking if she was okay and if she knew anything about what was going on. 15 of the longest minutes of my life passed before she finally replied. Her message made my blood run cold. "Someone's been banging on our classroom door and screaming. It went on for 10 minutes, but now they're gone." I didn't tell anyone what she said. Everyone was already freaked out enough. Then I heard it, yelling in the distance. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. The yelling grew louder, closer, and then there was a sudden, violent banging on our classroom door. I froze. "Come out, little piggies." A man's voice sneered, followed by a burst of crazed laughter. "I've got a gun. You think you can hide from me?" Some students began quietly crying, muffling their sobs in their sleeves. Our teacher was on the phone with 911, whispering updates about what was happening. But then it got worse. A loud bang echoed through the hallway, followed by screaming. It wasn't a knock, it was a gunshot. Several of us cried out in fear, and the man outside laughed again, louder this time, taunting us like it was some sick game. Then came more shouting, this time from police. "Drop the weapon! Hands in the air!" For a moment, all I could hear was chaos. Running, shouting, and the man's deranged screams. The tension was unbearable. It felt like forever before things went quiet again. 30 more agonizing minutes crawled by before we finally got the all clear. The man had been arrested and the school was safe again. As we walked out of the building, escorted by officers, I felt numb. I couldn't believe how close we had come to real danger. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but that day has stuck with me ever since. Even now, thinking about it sends a shiver down my spine. Sleep tight.